The telegram arrived on a Tuesday, a day Lucy Vaughn would later mark as the moment her life finally cracked open like the dry earth of Kearney, Nebraska, after months without rain. The yellow paper trembled in her hands as she read the words that confirmed what the doctors in Boston had told her 3 years prior: her condition was permanent, irreversible. Her cousin Eliza had consulted with specialists in New York who concurred. Lucy's childhood illness had left her barren, unable to ever bear children. "Miss Vaughn, you look as though you've seen a ghost." Mrs. Patterson's voice cut through Lucy's thoughts as she stood frozen in the mercantile. Lucy quickly folded the telegram, tucking it into her dress pocket. "Just news from back east, Mrs. Patterson. Nothing of concern." But it was of concern, deep, painful concern, that had driven Lucy thousands of miles west from her family's Massachusetts home to this frontier town, where nobody knew her past or the shameful secret she carried. At 26, unmarried and unable to fulfill what everyone deemed a woman's primary purpose, she had fled the pitying glances and whispered conversations. Kearney in 1878 was a different world from Boston Rower, less confined by social niceties, yet still governed by expectations Lucy could never meet. She had found work as the town's schoolteacher, a respectable position for a spinster, which she had resigned herself to being. The children gave her purpose, even as they reminded her daily of what she could never have. As Lucy stepped out of the mercantile into the late September sunshine, she nearly collided with a tall figure rounding the corner. "Pardon me, madam." The man's voice was deep, with a slight drawl that marked him as not originally from Nebraska. Lucy looked up to see Owen Fitzgerald, owner of the Diamond F Ranch outside town. His broad shoulders blocked the sun, casting her in shadow. She had met him several times at church socials and town meetings since her arrival 6 months ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "Mr. Fitzgerald, no harm done." She attempted to step around him, but he shifted his weight, blocking her path unintentionally. "Miss Vaughn, I believe." His blue eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled. "I heard you were doing fine work with the children at the schoolhouse." Lucy felt a familiar warmth creep into her cheeks. Owen Fitzgerald was handsome in a weathered way, not polished like the Boston men she'd grown up around, but solid and sure, like the land he worked. At 32, he was established, respected, and according to town gossip, still unmarried after losing his young wife to fever 5 years earlier. "Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. The children are bright and eager to learn." She clutched her market basket tighter, the telegram burning a hole in her pocket. "I was wondering if you might consider coming out to the ranch sometime." When Lucy's eyes widened, he quickly added, "To tutor my foreman's boys. Good kids, but their pa worries they're falling behind without proper schooling." "I see." Lucy wasn't sure if she felt relief or disappointment. "I could come on Saturday afternoons, perhaps." Owen nodded, his hat casting shadows across his tanned face. "That would be mighty appreciated. I can send a wagon for you." As Lucy walked home to her small rented room behind Mrs. Holloway's boarding house, she tried to ignore the flutter in her chest. It was foolish to feel anything when she knew she could never be what a man like Owen Fitzgerald would want: a wife who could give him sons to inherit his land, daughters to brighten his home. The telegram had only confirmed what she already knew. That night, Lucy sat at her small desk and wrote a letter to her sister back in Boston, carefully omitting any mention of Owen Fitzgerald or the feelings his brief attention had stirred. Instead, she described the changing leaves along the Platte River and the preparations for harvest. She didn't mention the telegram or her renewed grief. Some burdens were too heavy to share, even with those who loved you most. Saturday came quickly. Lucy wore her best day dress navy blue with small white flowers and pinned her chestnut hair carefully. She told herself it was simply proper to present herself well as a teacher, not because Owen Fitzgerald would see her. The wagon arrived promptly at noon, but instead of a ranch hand as she expected, Owen himself sat holding the reins. Lucy hesitated on the boarding house steps. "Good afternoon, Miss Vaughn," he called, tipping his hat. "Hope you don't mind me coming instead of sending one of the boys. Wanted to make sure you arrived safely." The 12-mile journey to the Diamond F passed with surprising ease. Owen asked intelligent questions about her teaching methods, and Lucy found herself talking more freely than she had in months. He spoke of his ranch with obvious pride, the careful breeding of his cattle, the new windmill he'd installed, the orchard he'd started that was finally bearing fruit. "My late wife, Sarah, always wanted apple trees," he said, his voice softening. "I planted them the spring after she passed. Felt like I owed it to her somehow." Lucy's heart ached for him. "I'm sure she would have appreciated that." "What brought you all the way from Boston to Nebraska, Miss Vaughn, if you don't mind my asking?" Lucy stiffened, her rehearsed answer ready. "I wanted adventure, and teaching positions are plentiful out west." Owen glanced at her, his eyes seeing more than she wanted to reveal. "Adventure, is it?" "Most folks coming west are either running to something or away from something. Sometimes both." The Diamond F Ranch spread across rolling hills dotted with cottonwoods. The main house was larger than Lucy expected, 2 stories of solid construction with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings, a corral, and a bunkhouse completed the central compound. "It's lovely," Lucy said sincerely. "Built most of it myself," Owen replied, pride evident in his voice. "Added the 2nd story last year. Too much space for just one man, but—" He trailed off, then smiled. "The foreman's family is waiting in the cookhouse. That's where we thought you could hold lessons, plenty of table space." The afternoon passed quickly as Lucy assessed the 2 boys, Jack, 10, and Henry, 8, finding them bright but in need of structure. Their father, Mr. Cooper, expressed earnest gratitude that bordered on embarrassment. "Never had much schooling myself," he admitted. "Can't help them the way I should." "That's what community is for, Mr. Cooper," Lucy assured him. "We all have different gifts." When the lesson concluded, Owen appeared to walk Lucy back to the wagon. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the prairie gold and amber. "Would you like to see the orchard before we head back?" Owen asked. Lucy knew she should decline. The proper thing would be to return directly to town. But the warmth in Owen's eyes and her own curiosity won out. "I'd like that very much." The small orchard lay in a protected hollow behind the main house. The trees were young but laden with small red apples. "Sarah was from New York State," Owen explained as they walked between the rows. "Said the thing she missed most was apple picking in autumn. I promised her someday we'd have our own orchard." He reached up and plucked a perfect apple, polishing it on his sleeve before offering it to Lucy. "First good harvest this year." Lucy accepted the fruit, their fingers brushing. "It's a beautiful tribute to her. She would have been 30 this year." Owen's voice held old pain, but not fresh grief. "Took me a long while to stop feeling like I was betraying her memory by continuing to live." Lucy bit into the apple to hide her discomfort. This conversation was veering into territory too intimate for mere acquaintances. "The boys did well today," she said, changing the subject. "With regular lessons, they'll catch up quickly." Owen nodded, allowing the shift. "Their ma died in the same fever that took Sarah. Cooper's been raising them alone ever since." They walked back to the wagon in companionable silence. As Owen helped Lucy up to the seat, his hands strong at her waist, she felt a dangerous longing unfurl within her chest. On the return journey, Clouds gathered on the horizon, promising evening rain. Owen kept the horses at a steady pace, occasionally pointing out features of the landscape, a hawk circling overhead, the distant silhouette of a coyote, wildflowers still blooming despite the advancing season. "Will you come again next Saturday?" he asked as they approached town. "Yes," Lucy replied, perhaps too quickly. "The boys need consistent instruction." Owen's smile told her he was pleased. "I'll come for you myself." In the weeks that followed, Lucy found herself counting the days between Saturdays. The tutoring sessions expanded to include 3 more children from neighboring ranches, and Owen always made time to speak with her afterward. Sometimes they walked in the orchard. Other times, he showed her improvements to the ranch, the new calf barn, the vegetable garden he'd expanded. October turned to November, and the prairie temperatures dropped. Lucy wore her heaviest coat for the journey to the Diamond F, but still shivered in the wagon. "Winter comes quick out here," Owen observed, noticing her discomfort. He unwound his own scarf and, without asking, wrapped it around her neck. "Can't have our teacher catching cold." The wool carried his scent, leather, hay, and something uniquely Owen. Lucy knew she should protest the familiarity but couldn't bring herself to do so. "Thank you," she said instead, burying her nose in the scarf. That afternoon, after the lessons, Owen invited her into the main house for the first time. "Too cold for orchard walking," he explained. "Thought you might like some coffee before heading back." Lucy hesitated only briefly before nodding. The house interior was simply but comfortably furnished, solid pieces built for durability rather than fashion. A fireplace dominated the main room, with bookshelves on either side that surprised her with their contents. Dickens, Emerson. Lucy ran her fingers along the spines. "I wouldn't have expected." Owen looked almost embarrassed. "Always loved reading. My mother was a schoolteacher before she married my father. She brought books west when the family moved from Pennsylvania." Lucy's estimation of Owen rose further. They sat before the fire with coffee, and conversation flowed easily from books to music to childhood memories. When Lucy finally noticed the time, she was shocked to find that nearly 2 hours had passed. "I should return to town," she said reluctantly. Owen nodded, rising to help her with her coat. "Miss Vaughn, Lucy," he said, using her given name for the first time. "I've greatly enjoyed these Saturdays." "As have I," she admitted. "Would it be too forward to call on you properly? In town, perhaps for Sunday dinner after church?" Lucy froze, her happiness curdling into anxiety. This was the moment she had both longed for and dreaded, when polite friendship threatened to become something more. "Mr. Fitzgerald, Owen, please." "Owen." His name felt right on her lips. "I'm flattered, truly. But I don't think that would be wise." His expression fell slightly, but he nodded. "I've been too hasty, forgive me." "There's nothing to forgive," Lucy said quickly. "You've been a perfect gentleman." The ride back to town was quieter than usual, though not uncomfortable. At the boarding house, Owen helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering slightly longer than necessary. "Good night, Lucy," he said softly. "Good night, Owen." That night, Lucy couldn't sleep. Owen's invitation played through her mind repeatedly. In another life, a normal life, she would have accepted without hesitation. But how could she encourage his interest knowing what she knew? It would be cruel to allow him to develop feelings for a woman who could never give him the family he deserved. The next morning at church, Lucy deliberately sat where she couldn't see Owen, slipping out quickly after the benediction to avoid any conversation. She maintained this careful distance for 2 weeks, sending a note that she was unwell and couldn't come to the ranch. It was Mrs. Holloway who finally confronted her. "That poor man has ridden into town 3 times this week asking after your health," the landlady said, hands on her hips. Whatever's between you two, it's not my business, but lying about being sick isn't like you, Lucy Vaughn. Lucy flushed with shame. It's complicated, Mrs. Holloway. The older woman's face softened. Things worth having usually are, dear. The following day, Lucy was arranging books in the schoolhouse after the children had left when she heard a horse approach. She knew without looking that it was Owen, Miss Vaughn. His voice was formal as he stepped into the schoolroom, hat in hand. Glad to see you've recovered from your illness. Lucy couldn't meet his eyes. Mr. Fitzgerald, I apologize for my deception. Have I offended you somehow? He asked directly. No, not at all. Then I don't understand. He moved closer. I thought we were becoming friends, at least. Then suddenly you're avoiding me as if I carried the plague. Lucy closed her eyes briefly, gathering courage. You deserve honesty. My avoidance isn't about you, it's about me, about what I can't be. Owen's brow furrowed. I don't understand. If you're seeking more than friendship, you should know that Lucy's voice caught. I cannot have children. Ever. My illness as a child made sure of that. The words hung in the air between them. Lucy waited for the disappointed recognition to cross his face, the polite withdrawal she'd seen from suitors back in Boston once they learned the truth. Instead, Owen stepped closer. Is that all? Lucy blinked. Isn't that enough? What man wants a barren wife? This may surprise you, Lucy, but I don't value women solely as bearers of children. There was a hint of irritation in his voice. Society does, she countered, and most men want heirs. Owen sighed deeply. I had 5 years with Sarah. We tried for children, but none came. I loved her no less for it. He moved closer still. I've spent 5 years alone, convincing myself that chapter of my life was closed. Then you arrived in Kearney, and suddenly I found myself looking forward to each day again. Lucy felt tears threatening. I can't give you what Sarah might have eventually. You're not Sarah, Owen said gently, and I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking to court you as yourself, Lucy Vaughn, the woman whose mind and heart have captured my interest completely. And if courtship led to marriage, would you truly be content knowing there would never be children? Owen reached for her hand, enveloping it in his larger one. Then it would be just us two, and that would be more than enough. The sincerity in his eyes undid her. Lucy allowed herself, for the first time, to consider the possibility of happiness she'd thought forever denied to her. I would like very much if you called on me properly, she said quietly. Owen's smile was like sunrise. Sunday dinner after church? Yes. True to his word, Owen appeared at the boarding house after Sunday services, dressed in his best suit, hair still damp from combing. Mrs. Holloway smiled knowingly as she showed him to the parlor where Lucy waited. Their courtship progressed with a steady, deliberate pace that felt both cautious and inevitable. Owen called on Lucy twice weekly in town, in addition to her Saturday visits to the ranch. They took walks along the river, attended the harvest social together, and gradually became recognized as a couple by the townspeople of Kearney. In December, when Lucy mentioned her plan to remain in her room for Christmas rather than make the long journey back to Boston, Owen looked appalled. You can't spend Christmas alone, he declared. I'll hardly be alone, Lucy protested. Mrs. Holloway has invited me to join her family dinner. Come to the ranch instead, Owen said. Cooper's sister is visiting with her family. The house will be full of people. No one should be away from family at Christmas. The word family caught in Lucy's heart. I wouldn't want to intrude. Owen took her hand, a gesture that had become comfortably familiar. Lucy Vaughn, nothing would make me happier than having you there. Christmas at the Diamond was everything Lucy had not allowed herself to want: warmth, laughter, belonging. Owen had decorated the house with pine boughs and red ribbons. Cooper's sister, Martha, and her husband brought their 3 children, filling the rooms with the chaos and joy of young voices. The boys Lucy tutored presented her with handmade gifts, a whittled wooden apple, a drawing of the schoolhouse. After dinner, while the others gathered around the piano for carols, Owen drew Lucy aside to the study. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Lucy unwrapped it carefully to reveal a book, a beautiful leather-bound edition of Emerson's essays. Opening the cover, she found an inscription in Owen's neat handwriting. "To Lucy, who brought light back into my world, with deepest affection, Owen." "It's perfect," she whispered, touching the words gently. Owen's expression grew serious. "I have something else to say, Lucy, something important." Her heart quickened. "Yes, I find myself thinking of you constantly. When you're not here, the ranch feels empty despite all the hands and activity." He took both her hands in his. "I know we've only known each other a few months, but some things a man just knows in his soul." "Owen, please, let me finish before my courage fails." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Lucy Vaughn. I want to build a life with you, just us two, if that's how it's meant to be. Or with children we might foster or adopt if you wanted that someday. But mainly, I just want you by my side, making this house a home again." Lucy felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love you too," she managed. "So much it frightens me sometimes." Owen gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. "Is that a yes? Will you marry me, Lucy?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Their kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise and a beginning. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Kearney. Most responses were congratulatory, though Lucy occasionally caught whispers about her age and suspected infertility. Owen seemed oblivious to such talk, or perhaps simply unbothered by it. Lucy wrote to her family in Boston, bracing for disappointment or concern. Instead, her sister responded with genuine happiness and announced she would travel west for the wedding. Her parents, though unable to make the journey, sent their blessing along with her grandmother's wedding veil. They planned a spring wedding, April 1879, when the prairie would be turning green again. The winter passed in a flurry of preparations, as Lucy divided her time between teaching and learning the workings of the ranch that would soon be her home. In February, a blizzard struck Nebraska, isolating the Diamond F for nearly a week. Lucy, who had been visiting to help Martha sew curtains for the bedroom she would soon share with Owen, found herself unexpectedly stranded. Propriety dictated concern, but Lucy secretly treasured those days sitting before the fire with Owen, planning their future while snow piled against the windows. "I've been thinking about the north bedroom," Owen said one evening. "The one down the hall from ours." Lucy looked up from her sewing. "Oh, it gets good morning light. Might make a fine room for a child someday if we're blessed that way." Lucy's hands stilled. "Owen, you know that's unlikely," he nodded, reaching for her fingers. "I know what the doctors told you. But I also know that doctors aren't always right, and miracles do happen." When Lucy remained silent, he continued gently, "And if not by birth, there are other ways to build a family. War orphans, children who have lost parents to illness or accident. This land has no shortage of young ones needing homes." "You've thought about this," Lucy said, surprised. "Of course I have. Not because I need children to be happy with you, I meant what I said about us two being enough. But because I see how you light up around the students, how natural you are with them." He squeezed her hand. "I want you to know that door isn't closed unless you want it to be." Lucy leaned against his shoulder, overwhelmed by gratitude for this man who continued to expand her vision of what life could be, rather than narrowing it. "Thank you," she whispered. When the snow finally cleared enough for travel, Owen insisted on escorting Lucy back to town himself, despite his foreman's protests that there was work needing his attention. "Miss Vaughn's safety is my most important work," Owen replied firmly. The journey was slow, the wagon replaced by a sleigh that glided over the deep snow. Lucy, bundled in blankets with heated bricks at her feet, watched Owen's capable hands on the reins and allowed herself to fully embrace the future awaiting them. As April approached, Lucy's sister Margaret arrived from Boston, bringing trunks of Eastern fashions and a cosmopolitan air that initially intimidated the townspeople of Kearney. But Margaret's genuine warmth soon won them over, particularly when she rolled up her silk sleeves to help with wedding preparations. "He's wonderful, Lucy," Margaret said after meeting Owen. "Different from the men back home, more substantial somehow." Lucy smiled. "He sees me, Maggie. Not what I can't do, but who I am." The wedding day dawned clear and mild, a perfect spring morning. The small church in Kearney overflowed with well-wishers from town and neighboring ranches. Lucy wore a simple white dress that Margaret had helped her make, with their grandmother's veil floating around her shoulders. Owen, waiting at the altar, looked at Lucy, as if she were the answer to every prayer he'd ever uttered. His vows, spoken in a voice steady and true, promised partnership, respect, and unwavering love, whether blessed with many or content with just us two. Lucy's own vows, practiced countless times in private, flowed from her heart promises to share his burdens, celebrate his joys, and build together a life neither of them could create alone. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. Owen's kiss was tender yet certain, a seal on promises made and a future beginning. The celebration afterward at the Diamond F lasted well into the night. Lanterns hung from tree branches, casting golden light over tables laden with food. Musicians played while couples danced on a wooden platform Owen's men had constructed for the occasion. As dusk deepened into night, Lucy found herself momentarily alone, watching Owen laugh with Cooper's boys. Margaret appeared beside her, champagne glass in hand. "You look happy, sister," she observed. "I am," Lucy replied simply. "Happier than I ever thought possible." After the last guests departed and Margaret retired to the guest room, Owen led Lucy upstairs to their bedroom. He had renovated it, completely new curtains, a larger bed, a dressing table by the window. "Welcome home, Mrs. Fitzgerald," he said softly. That night, as they discovered each other with reverent touches and whispered endearments, Lucy finally laid to rest the ghost of inadequacy that had haunted her for so long. In Owen's arms, she was not deficient or lacking, she was complete, cherished enough. Life as Mrs. Fitzgerald settled into a rhythm that suited Lucy perfectly. She continued teaching at the schoolhouse 3 days a week, while learning to manage the household aspects of the ranch. Under Martha's patient guidance, Lucy improved her cooking skills, mastered the art of preserving fruits and vegetables for winter, and grew comfortable directing the occasional hired help. Owen, true to his word, never expressed disappointment in their childless state. They created traditions of their own, reading aloud to each other in the evenings, Sunday rides across the property, monthly dinners where they invited ranch hands and neighbors to share their table. In the fall of 1879, the orphanage in Lincoln reached out to schools across Nebraska, seeking temporary homes for children during a scarlet fever outbreak at the facility. Lucy immediately volunteered to host 2 children at the ranch. "Are you certain?" Owen asked when she told him. "It might be difficult when they have to return." "They need us now," Lucy replied. "That's what matters." The children, Nora, 8, and her brother William, 6, arrived thin and solemn-faced, clutching small bundles containing their few possessions. They regarded the ranch with suspicious wonder, as if expecting it might disappear if they blinked. "You'll have your own rooms," Lucy told them gently, "and there are horses you can learn to ride when you're ready." "We can't stay forever," William said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Benson at the orphanage told us." Owen knelt to the boy's level. "That's true. But while you're here, this is your home, all of it." The children blossomed under the combined attention of Lucy, Owen, and the entire ranch community. Nora revealed a talent for drawing that Owen encouraged by ordering proper sketching materials from Omaha. William, initially fearful of the horses, gradually gained confidence under Cooper's patient instruction until he could ride the gentlest mare around the corral. When November arrived, bringing news that the orphanage had reopened, Lucy fought back tears as she helped the children pack their expanded belongings. "Can we write to you?" Nora asked, her small face serious. "I would be heartbroken if you didn't," Lucy replied, hugging her tightly. After the children departed, the house felt eerily quiet. Lucy found Owen in the barn that evening, methodically brushing his horse long after the animal was clean. "I miss them too," she said softly. Owen nodded without turning. "They should be here, with us." "The orphanage has procedures, Owen. We can't simply—" "I've been thinking about it for weeks," he interrupted, finally facing her. "About applying to adopt them properly." Lucy's heart leapt. "Truly, if you want to, if you think we're ready." "Yes," Lucy whispered. "Yes to both." The adoption process proved more complicated than either had anticipated. There were visits from officials, questions about their marriage, their resources, their motivations. Lucy's inability to bear children was scrutinized in a way that reopened old wounds. "It's almost as if they think we're less qualified because we haven't had our own," she said one night, frustrated after a particularly intrusive interview. Owen pulled her close. "We know better, and we'll keep trying, no matter how long it takes." It took nearly a year of letters exchanged with Nora and William, of trips to Lincoln to visit them, of building a case that the Diamond F was where they belonged. Finally, in October 1880, approval came. The children would come home for Christmas permanently. The preparations were joyful chaos. Lucy transformed the 2 bedrooms closest to the master suite, filling them with comfortable furniture, books, and toys. Owen built a sledding hill behind the house and acquired 2 puppies from a neighboring ranch's recent litter. When the children arrived, their cautious expressions of the previous year were replaced by beaming smiles. Nora ran to Lucy, throwing her arms around her waist. "You didn't forget us," she marveled. "Never," Lucy promised, her voice thick with emotion. "Not for a single day." That Christmas Eve, after the children had finally succumbed to sleep, Lucy and Owen sat before the fire, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him. "Happy?" he asked simply. "Beyond words," Lucy replied. "You've given me everything I never dared hope for." Owen kissed her temple. "We gave it to each other, Lucy. That's what partnership means." Spring brought new growth to the Diamond F calves in the pastures, blossoms in the orchard, and unexpected news that left Lucy light-headed in the doctor's office in Kearney. "Are you absolutely certain?" She asked Dr. Reynolds for the 3rd time. The physician's kind eyes crinkled with amusement. "As certain as medical science allows, Mrs. Fitzgerald. You're approximately 3 months along. The baby should arrive in late summer." Lucy rode home in a daze, her hand resting protectively over her still flat abdomen. The impossible had happened, a miracle she had resigned herself to never experiencing. She found Owen repairing fence with 2 of the hands, his shirt sleeves rolled up, hat shading his face from the May sunshine. "Owen," she called, sliding from her horse with less grace than usual. "Could I speak with you privately?" Concern immediately crossed his features. "Of course." He nodded to the hands to continue without him and followed Lucy toward the house. "Is everything all right, doctor?" Reynolds didn't find anything concerning, did he? Lucy stopped beneath an apple tree in full bloom, white petals occasionally drifting down around them. "He found something, yes." She took Owen's weathered hands in hers. "I'm going to have a baby, our baby." Owen stared at her, incomprehension giving way to wonder. "But the doctors in Boston said they were wrong," Lucy said simply. "Or perhaps they were right about the difficulty, but not the impossibility." Owen pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in a circle that sent apple blossoms swirling. When he set her down, there were tears in his eyes. "A baby," he whispered, placing his hand reverently on her stomach. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Lucy asked, suddenly anxious. "I know we've built our life a certain way, and now everything will change." Owen's laugh was joyous. "Lucy Fitzgerald, from the moment I met you, everything I thought I knew about life changed for the better. This is just one more beautiful surprise." He kissed her deeply. "How do you think Nora and William will take the news?" The children's reactions proved as different as their personalities. Nora was immediately excited, peppering Lucy with questions about babies and volunteering to help with everything from picking names to sewing blankets. William was more reserved, his small face serious as he processed the information. "Will the baby be more yours than we are?" he finally asked Owen when they were checking the chicken coop for eggs. Owen's heart clenched. "No, son, not possible. But this baby grows inside Lucy. And has your blood." Owen sat on a hay bale, patting the space beside him. When William joined him, Owen put his arm around the boy's thin shoulders. "Family isn't made just by blood, William. It's made by love and choice and promises kept. You and Nora became ours the moment we chose each other, not one bit less than this baby." William considered this. "Can the baby call me brother? For real?" "Nothing would make me prouder," Owen assured him. As Lucy's body changed with the advancing pregnancy, she found herself marveling at this unexpected chapter of their story. She had come to Nebraska resigned to childlessness, had found happiness in a marriage that promised just us two, had expanded her heart to include Nora and William, and now this miraculous new life grew beneath her heart. Summer brought scorching heat that made Lucy uncomfortable and lethargic. Owen insisted on hiring additional help so she could rest more, despite her protests that pregnancy wasn't an illness. The children hovered anxiously, bringing her cool drinks and competing to feel the baby's increasingly vigorous movements. In late August, as wheat fields turned golden around Kearney, Lucy's labor began slowly at first, then with an intensity that left her gasping. Owen sent one of the hands racing for the midwife while he held Lucy's hand through each contraction. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known," he told her repeatedly. "You can do this, Lucy." After 14 hours that tested the limits of Lucy's endurance, their son entered the world with a powerful cry that brought tears to Owen's eyes. The midwife cleaned and wrapped the infant before placing him in Lucy's trembling arms. "He's perfect," Lucy whispered, counting tiny fingers and toes, marveling at the dark hair that already resembled Owen's. "Just like his mother," Owen replied, his voice rough with emotion as he perched on the edge of the bed, one arm around Lucy, the other hand gently touching their son's cheek. They named him Thomas, after Lucy's father, with James as a middle name to honor Owen's. When Nora and William were allowed in to meet their brother, their awestruck expressions completed Lucy's joy. "He's so small," William marveled, cautiously touching Thomas's fist. "But he'll grow," Nora said confidently, "and we'll teach him everything." As autumn painted the prairie in russets and golds, the Fitzgerald family settled into their expanded reality. Thomas proved to be a contented baby, gazing at the world with curious eyes that gradually shifted from newborn blue to a hazel that matched Lucy's. Owen often carried his son in a sling across his chest while working around the ranch house, pointing out cattle and horses to the infant as if he could understand every word. Lucy watched them one October afternoon from the porch, Thomas babbling happily as Owen showed him how apple cider was pressed. Nearby, Nora sketched the scene while William constructed an elaborate fort from sticks and twine. This was the life Lucy had never dared to imagine for herself, rich with love, abundant in its blessings, complete in ways she hadn't known to hope for. She thought of the day Owen had proposed, his words simple but profound. "Then it's just us two." Except it hadn't remained just the two of them. Their love had created a gravity that drew others into its orbit, first Nora and William, now Thomas, and who knew what the future might hold. Their family had grown in unexpected ways, proving that love was the most powerful force for creation that existed. That evening, after the children were asleep, Lucy found Owen in his study reviewing cattle records. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Fitzgerald?" he asked, covering her hands with his. "About promises kept," she replied, "and miracles unexpected." Owen turned in his chair to face her, pulling her onto his lap. "The day I met you outside the mercantile, I had no idea my life was about to change forever." Lucy stroked his cheek. "Nor I. I was so determined to keep everyone at a distance." "I'm glad I'm stubborn," Owen said with a smile. "I'm glad you saw possibility where I saw only limitation," Lucy replied. Owen kissed her gently. "That's what love does, Lucy. It expands our vision of what's possible." As they climbed the stairs to check on their sleeping children, the two they had chosen, and the one who had come as an unexpected blessing, Lucy reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the heartbreak of that telegram confirming her barrenness to the joy of watching her son nurse at her breast, life had proven far more generous and surprising than she could have imagined. The Diamond F Ranch had become exactly what Owen had promised that day in the schoolroom, a home where Lucy was valued for herself, not for what she could or couldn't provide. Together, they had built something beautiful and enduring, a family defined not by biology but by bonds of commitment and love. And though Thomas's arrival had been a miracle Lucy never expected, she knew the true miracle was the man who had loved her enough to say, "Then it's just us two," and meant it with his whole heart. Years later, when their family had grown to include another surprise twin daughters born in the spring of 1883, Lucy would still sometimes marvel at how differently life had unfolded from what she had feared. On the 15th anniversary of their wedding, Owen presented her with a locket containing miniature portraits of their 5 children, Nora and William, now accomplished young adults, Thomas and the twins, Elizabeth and Sarah. "Remember what I told you when I proposed?" Owen asked as Lucy admired the gift. "Then it's just us two," she quoted, smiling at the memory. Owen wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder as they watched their children playing in the orchard that had grown tall and abundant with the passing years. "I meant it then," he said softly. "And even with all this wonderful chaos at the heart of everything, it still is." Lucy turned in his arms, rising on tiptoe to kiss the man who had taught her that love wasn't about what was missing, but about what could be built together. "Just us two," she agreed. "The foundation of everything,